David Guetta. Listen. Where to even start? Well, you may notice that this video has no background music. I think that should be a hint as to where my opinion is going. Well, David Guetta said about this album that he wanted to change up his formula a bit. Since he had been going through not exactly easy times involving the divorce of his wife, Kathy Guetta, he decided that he wanted to make this next album a more personal one. In addition, he wanted to change up the way he put together his songs, this time beginning with an acoustic song, building it into a typical EDM song later. How convenient this was around the time that the EDM world was falling head over heels for Avicii and his brand of country sadness meets happy screeching drops. It should probably be no surprise to hear that this album sounds exactly like it came out of Avicii. Everything about this album follows Avicii's formula pretty much to the letter, starting out with some kind of sad acoustic ballad before blasting you with Avicii-style high-pitched screeching synths, or some unpleasant variety of such. Just as Nothing But the Beat was a cheap Daft Punk ripoff, Listen is a cheap Avicii ripoff. It sounds less like a personal expression of David Guetta's feelings and more like a cash-in on current EDM pop trends for 2014. After all, by 2014, America had gotten sick of pop music being stupid all the time, and wanted something more out of it, and gave money to people like Sam Smith and Ed Sheeran, and Wiz Khalifa's piano ballads in 2015. Yes, I know I like that song too, but I digress. Technically, Guetta delivers on something more in that it's not just plain old formulaic EDM like his last album. There's even orchestras and piano-centric songs, and even some country elements. I know, right? It's totally like no one's ever done that before, and especially not... Okay, I realize I am bringing up Avicii way too much in this review already, but it really is ridiculous how similar this album is to Avicii's True. It does help that Avicii co-produces 2 tracks on this album, but the whole album may as well have been produced by him. The more country-sounding tracks, i.e. Lovers on the Sun and Yesterday, are co-produced by Avicii, and yes, he does in fact completely dominate these tracks. As usual, the build-ups and drops are unbelievably predictable, as are the chord structures. Everything is just, well, you know. But the thing about Avicii's True is that I never really liked that album that much in the first place. I mean, it's a creative album with some good ideas and singers that actually seem to care about what they were singing. And not to mention there was actually one really good song on True, Hey Brother. But basically all the drops on that album sounded like ass, using the already often mentioned screeching synth setting that makes my hair stand on end. But Listen is basically True without any of the things that made it creative or interesting. Most of the songs aren't even sad like Guetta was advertising. They're just more pseudo-inspirational bullshit along the Rachel Platten lines. While Listen is not as grating a listen as Disc 1 of Nothing But the Beat, it somehow got even less substance. There's barely anything for me to latch on to. And on top of that, you know how I said True at least sounded like the singers were putting some passion or emotion into their performance? Well, big surprise, this is Guetta. And of course they don't hear. The lack of emotion in any of the performance make this album completely insufferable. Not one emotion expressed within this album feels remotely genuine. Perhaps the most obvious example of how emotionally bullshit this album is the track Goodbye Friend with the script. Like, that sounds like it'd be about saying goodbye to a friend, right? But it's still trying to be feel-good crap, with lines about how this is not the end, and the vocals sound way too happy. It sounds like someone who's being forced to say goodbye to a friend that he's not actually going to miss at all. This album, it leads to this weird sense of emotional sludge that really just makes me want to throw up. This emotional sludge effect is admittedly a rare occurrence. The only time off the top of my head that all of the emotions of an album clashed in such a thoroughly unpleasant way was Flume Skin. Probably the main reason I got so little enjoyment out of that album, despite that being far, 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 far better produced than this. But yeah, the emotional bullshit involved in this album is the kind of thing that just gets me in a special pit of my stomach. Listen may just kind of be vaguely unpleasant with one listen. Listen to it twice in a row, it gets thoroughly unpleasant. And listen to it 3 times in a row, I don't know actually, because I've never pulled that off. The one time I did try to do that, I pulled out my headphones in disgust in the middle of No Money, No Love and refused to listen to it again. I suppose there are some moments of note though, so I'll try to go into detail on those. I guess there's Dangerous, which has a nice 70s vibe that totally doesn't sound like another Daft Punk ripoff as usual. We got Lovers on the Sun, which has a build-up that sounds like the soundtrack to a Western movie, before dropping into the standard Avicii synth screeching. And The Whisperer, just a plain piano track with Sia's vocals that is less and less fun every time I hear it. I kinda half wish there was an instrumental version of that particular song, but like, fuck, I care. But that's where any enjoyment out of this album I got ends. I got some serious senses of deja vu on the tracks What I Did for Love and I'll Keep Loving You. Their melodies are ripped off from somewhere, but I can't put my finger on where exactly. No Money, No Love has an atrocious drop that's no fun whatsoever, with other unpleasant sounds drudging on. But at least that track has basically the only lyrical sentiment I believe on this album, in that Guetta doesn't love you or give a shit about you unless you give him money. Lift Me Up wastes a Ladysmith Black Mambazo vocal performance on one of the most generic sounding songs Guetta's ever put out. And that's really saying something. By the way, all the male vocalists on this album sound basically exactly the same. Ladysmith Black Mambazo doesn't sound that much different from John Legend, Sam Martin, Ryan Tedder, or The Script, aside from maybe a little tiny hint of an accent or something. Oh, and Nico and Vince as well, who is also completely indistinguishable from Ladysmith, Black, whatever. Anyway, Bang My Head involves Sia singing that people should bang their head against the wall to rise above it all, or injure themselves to feel better, which, you know, is fantastic advice. Well, this album sure did make me want to bang my head against a wall, I'll say that. Hey Mama delivers a monotone performance from Nicki Minaj, making her indistinguishable from Baby Rexha, both of which are annoying as fuck, over a really no-fun trap beat or fake horns that sound like the crappy farting trumpets from Jason Derulo's trumpets. And a chorus that I think might rip off the melody and beat a little bit from Jason Derulo's Talk Dirty. This song used to at least be interesting, and it's different from Guetta's usual stuff, but thanks to the radio shoving this piece of crap down my throat for such a long time now, it's almost like this album's I Just Wanna F, which gets more and more annoying every time I hear it. Hey Mama used to be just bad, but now it just makes my skin crawl, as I made clear in my worst hits of 2015 list. Sun Goes Down has a very vague and insincere reggae influence right at the beginning, thanks to Magic, who of course are known for producing really fake-sounding reggae, before eventually falling into a boring, unsatisfying, and unpleasant drop. As for everything else, well, I guess I like the occasional use of strings. They sound more like the FL Studio string presets than, you know, actual string sections. Which I suppose in itself isn't the worst thing ever, but I'd rather call them manipulative and cheap rather than anything that adds to the experience. That's really everything I have to say regarding specific details on this album, so overall, look, you know, there's like 2 songs that come even close to catchy, and one of them had all avenues of enjoyment, however few there were, completely blocked off by radio overplay. The rest just kinda sits with me as a vague cloud of resentment over all the time wasted thinking about this album that has absolutely zero thought put into it whatsoever. I will give Guetta credit for not falling into formula abuse and rehashing the same material as his previous albums. All of his albums up to this point have at least been different flavors of awful. Unoriginal, boring, tedious, stupid, all of the above, and now all of the above plus pretentious and soulless. Well, nothing but the beat also is soulless, but whatever. And while I suppose this album is listenable, it's also excruciatingly boring and predictable. Especially if you're familiar at all with Avicii's work. It's like what EDM and pop music sound like to people who hate EDM and pop music. David Guetta wants us to listen, but he just wastes our time with crap we've already heard before. If this album was all I had to go off, I'll bet he wasn't actually sad about being divorced from Kathy Guetta at all. While there's nothing off this album that truly pisses me off like I Just Wanna F, there's nothing remotely good or well executed about this album either. This album is a complete waste of time, and a depressing one at that. I mean, I know it was meant to be depressing, but it's not depressing for any of the reasons Guetta intended. It's depressing because Guetta is too stuck in his happy formulas to make anything resembling emotion carry across. He's the wrong person to make this kind of music, and overall, this album just adds nothing to the fucking conversation. It's best that you never follow the instruction given to you by the title, ever. Don't listen, and especially don't listen again. Seriously, he needs to stop re-releasing his albums, by the way. But, overall, I'm feeling a 2.3 out of 10. But of course, this is just my opinion. You can feel free to disagree with it, but leave the comments in the comment thing and all the rest of it. And, that's all for today. See you next time.